Welcome to the Fat Cats Rugby podcast, bringing you candid rugby conversations, great interviews and insights into Ugandan rugby, and a touch of rugby in Africa and the world over. Fat Cats Rugby podcast is a product of Fat Cats Media brand for all your audio-visual content needs and equipment hire. Hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome to the Fat Cats podcast, yet another edition. Another beautiful evening here at the Gardens, Nigeria. As you can see the background there, preparing for the evening. There's going to be quiz night later today. So for those that can make it every Tuesday, there is quiz night. But of course, there's a lot more in store, and we shall be letting you know more about what they have in store, especially with this coming weekend. My name is Ruben Kihumuro, and today we have a two-man set. We normally have very crowded sets, but this one is, should I call it, an intellectual set. So whoever is not here, I have not said anything. But maybe just to quickly introduce the person we're with today. The name is Clive Kyazze. And what I know about him, the bit of research I have done so far is that he's a passionate sports journalist. He is a marketer. He is the General Secretary of Uganda Sports Press Association, USPA, and also part of 88.2 Sanyu FM. Is there anything that I have missed out?
Yeah, but that's for another day.
For another day. Okay, maybe Haji Salongo we shall see sometime. But thank you for being part of the podcast.
Yes, sir. I thank you for the invitation.
Yeah.
At first I was scared.
Why were you scared?
When you hear the name of the podcast, Fat Cats Podcast, there was a time when all the people on the set were I need fat cats. So looks like you're changing, you're breaking the.
It's a PR thing. People had put us in a box, and we didn't want to be in that box.
You had to have a bit of flesh on it.
We don't want people that play around with food. But what have you heard about the podcast? What have you seen about the podcast? Any episode that you like? Tell us.
Well, first of all, to be honest, I won't lie that I always look forward to the podcast, but every time I see it somewhere, I endeavor to watch. Okay. Depending sometimes on the guests that are on the podcast and all that. But of course, on so many occasions, almost sometimes all the guests that you host on the podcast are guests of substance. Yeah. And it has done a lot in enriching us or letting us know a lot that we don't know about Ugandan rugby. So for me, it is a product that every sports fanatic out there, especially rugby fans, should be looking forward to.
Yeah, definitely. It was very, very interesting there. But let's quickly jump into, I want to start with AFCON, the Africa Cup of Nations that's just recently concluded. Of course, you were covering it in Ivory Coast. Tell us about Ivory Coast. How is Ivory Coast as a country?
Very beautiful country. Of course, hot at the same time, but they invested a lot of time in infrastructure, the road network, the buildings, and everything. Of course, they have their own shortcomings as people, or generally people from West Africa. But by and large, as a country, I thought for me, even beyond the Africa Cup of Nations, it is a very peaceful country with very welcoming people. It is something that I've said time and again, and very hard to believe in an African country that there are no thieves in Ivory Coast.
Really?
You can comfortably walk with your phone on your street, record whatever you want to record without any fear of somebody's going to snatch my phones. People leave their cars on the road until morning. They are not scared that somebody will probably take the light, or even a mic will be stolen. So it is a very peaceful country, very peaceful people, but also I should say sports mad people. Because beyond the football, I also had the privilege to visit the headquarters of the Federation of International Basketball Association. The headquarters are in Ivory Coast, Abidjan, to be precise. And the people you talk to, the people you interact with, they also tell you how big basketball is in that country, much as it is yet to probably are spread out on the African continent. But it is a country, and you're saying that from a background of not Uganda as a country, but Kampala as a city, because we have to deal with port roads every day. The moment you go into a society and the roads are very smooth, it's very hard to encounter pothole. There's a bit of relief and comfort, especially if you're using a car to move here and there. So it's a country where you'll have stable roads, let me say, from Kampala to Arua. The road network is the same from Kampala to Busia to the border in Gatuna, and all that. They invested a lot in the road network, but also other facilities. I never had a chance to visit the hospital, but at least some of my colleagues were involved in a road accident when they were coming after one of those games in Yamsoku. Were admitted into hospitals, and everyone does tell you that actually the medical care was also up to standard, probably because they were being taken care of by the local organizing committee of CAF. But you feel from what we were able to see on the outside, it is a very, very beautiful country.
Yeah, interesting. So we've had so many times that there are the complaints about struggles of the African Cup of Nations in regards to viewership, in regards to attendance. What, from your perspective, do you think this one was a success, or do you think there were some other challenges still?
Without a doubt, it was a success. It was the third Africa Cup of Nations I was covering, but I've also watched a number of them since 1996. And if you religiously follow this tournament, even on TV, you will testify that it is very hard to have stadiums full when the host nation is not playing.
Yeah.
Very, very, very hard. If you have other teams playing, it is very hard to have people coming into the stadium. People will only come when the host nation is playing. It wasn't the case with this Africa Cup of Nations. Even in games when Ivory Coast was not playing, you could see that fans would turn up in big numbers. Of course, the stadiums wouldn't be full to capacity, but at least you would have 3/4 of the stadium full when even other national teams are playing. In terms of TV viewership, of course, I was telling somebody it is no longer a competition for the African audience. In the past, it was an African competition and not so many people really cared. But over time, TV viewership has grown because it has piqued a lot of interest in Europe, in Asia, South America, and North America, probably because of the different African superstars who play in these leagues predominantly in Europe. So the audience globally, especially across the African continent or beyond the African continent, has also grown over time. Of course, that goes with the quality of the football that the teams do exhibit out there, but also the facilities, because the stadiums, for instance, the ones in Ivory Coast, Cameroon and Egypt, these are stadiums that were well looked after for them to be able to meet the standards, not only for the players, but also for the people who are going to be watching on TV and those who will be coming into the stadium. So you feel that CAF and organizers or their partners, they're doing a great job in making sure that the competition grows every now and then.
Did you get to experience the culture from food, maybe a bit of the nightlife? Did you get any of those chances?
Food, I didn't like the food. Yeah, but the moment we landed on chips and rice, rather chips and chicken and a bit of rice, that became our staple food for the 30 days that we were in Ivory Coast.
You didn't even get tired of it at one point?
No, we didn't. But also, there are a few other things that we enjoyed. Fish there, smoked or roasted fish. It was nice. It's a delicacy that people used to enjoy a lot. My first meal, I think, was a fried cassava.
Okay.
It was very nice. Even when it was cold, it was still soft. Here, our cassava is soft when it's hot. When it gets cold, it gets hard. It wasn't the case. So you thought that apart from the acheke that they love a lot and having too much pepper in their sauce, the rest of the things were okay. Of course, there was a lot of bread. Of course, one night I was craving pork. And it is not something you easily find on the street like any other thing. I had to. The
way you just bump into something and get chikarai.
Exactly. It's hard. The other things you can easily get, chicken, fish, and all that. It wasn't the case with pork. So I was directed to a few restaurants that sell it, and getting there, it was damn expensive. I mean, you're talking about 10k cifers, which is about 62,000 Ugandan shillings, and you're like, am I spending all this? And then you're remembering how much you buy it at Chadon and all these other places, and you're like, I'm not about to spend 60k. But you're already hungry, you've traveled that long distance, so you go out and enjoy it. But by and large, even the nightlife, there are people who love to party. But then they're not like us. You go out at 8, 9, and you're like, by 1 or 2, I'll be back home. For them, they start going out past midnight. That is when people start getting out of their homes to go and party. When you're planning on going back to sleep, for them, they're planning on going out.
That's interesting, because when we went to Zimbabwe, midnight, they were chasing people to go back home. But it's interesting to hear what you're saying. I mean, one of the things that we do with our team whenever we get the opportunity to travel is, guys, you cannot go to a foreign country and not have something different to eat. Whether it is going to disorganize your stomach, that is something we can deal with. I mean, Edwin always says that I make jokes about it. I say that he's the marketing manager of Imodium in Uganda. There's a way that tablet can ideally tie, if I am to directly translate, tie your stomach, and you not having any issues after eating something that may cause...
It's like immunization.
Before eating, so you're like, you can eat, but I have Imodium. But anyway, talking about rugby, what was your first interaction with rugby?
UTL Cops.
UTL Cops. You've exposed your age a little bit,
but that I was coming towards the game. My father used to buy a lot of New Vision. And every time I was done reading about KCCFC and Jackson Mayanja, there was a lot of Alan Musoka and UTL Cops. And of course, blue was my favorite color, still my favorite color. Probably that explains the blue. And then one time, it was my birthday. I remember I got 40k from an auntie, and UTL had this phone on promotion. Remember those phones that were branded in the colors of the product? And there was this phone, it was in blue and black. The same colors that Cobbs used to put on top, blue, black pants and all that. But because of that love and affiliation, I was like, I'm buying this phone. Basically because of UTL Cobbs. Not even Cobbs, but UTL Cobbs. So that's about early 2000s. That was my first interaction with them.
Which ideally brings us to the next thing I even wanted to ask. Journalism and ethics versus supporting a team. First and foremost, does that mean that Cobbs is your team? Is the team you support?
No, it is.
It is?
Yeah.
But then, as a journalist, I thought you're supposed to be neutral. Now, if you're supporting a team, when they say that your stories or your whatever your submissions are biased.
Well, yes, without a doubt. I mean, that is where now your professionalism comes in. You support a certain team, but what kind of reporting are you doing? If you're doing a job, you need to be objective. If you're doing a job, you must report the truth. If you're doing a job, you must be factual. The challenge usually comes in when you let your passion override your professionalism or objectivity. Luckily, I've not found myself in that situation. But then, when you try to take it, to put it rather into that direction, and sometimes you even take it beyond the Ugandan borders. I've encountered colleagues, especially at a level like this. I've been at the Africa Cup of Nations, the Commonwealth Games, and all these other events. Sometimes it gets crazy. Probably because it is national teams involved. Sometimes journalists forget that they are journalists. They'll cheer their national teams. I've seen people crying in the stadiums when Argentina is winning the World Cup.
Are they allowed to show passion and emotion?
Somebody is doing commentary of the World Cup final, and they are shedding tears. I mean, CAF had to bring stringent rules during the Africa Cup of Nations when they beat Senegal to qualify for the next round. Ivory Coast journalists had to undress and dance.
Are you serious?
I mean, videos were making rounds. So people will get to that extreme. But at the end of the day, if you're going to sit down on this podcast or get out your laptop to put a report together, I mean, you need, your professionalism needs to supersede everything, because at the end of the day, your credibility is on the line.
Yeah, that's interesting. What's your best rugby experience in the time that you have covered the game, or been a fan of the game as well?
There was this one moment. First of all, how probably I start following the sport. Ismail Dakaba Chigong and Adeos Bugembe did a very, very good job, and Swai Brau Kanike.
Yeah.
There was this time in the Daily Monitor newsroom, and Adeos Bugembe was telling us about this boy called Ivan Magom, telling us all the good things, what kind of player he is. It's a conversation that lasted for about 1 hour. So while he was telling us that, the editor at the time, Mark Namanya, was listening. It was early in the week.
Yeah.
So Namanya told those in Uganda, he
created for himself extra work.
Like, give me that feature about Ivan.
Yeah.
I have space for you this weekend. And I think that weekend Pirates had a game. So you know how they tell you about someone and you're like, I need to go and
you need to go and see for yourself.
They were playing at Legends. I don't remember who they were playing. So I came to Legends because I wanted to see Ivan Magom, the person that Deus was talking about, and Ismail rubber stamped, and you're like, I need to go out and check out this guy. Yes, I come to Legends. Now, Ivan did what he did, but then the day I was there, a different person altogether caught my eye, and it was Marvin Odong.
Okay.
The manner in which he was doing his thing, I can equate him to the manner in which Zinedine Zidane used to play football.
Interesting.
So I was looking at this tall, dark, lanky guy, the way he held the ball and he was going through people, and it was a joy to watch. Okay. So much as I came to watch
at this point, were you understanding the rules and the dynamics of the game? A few.
I knew how they scored the points, but these are the deep talk, analytical stuff. Up to today, I struggle. But at least I enjoyed watching Marvin. But then one moment that caught my eye, it's still a Pirates moment, and it's a moment with Ivan Magom. I still don't remember who they were playing against. You know how the rugby ball is, the oval ball and all that. And I think Pirates did get a try at the other end of the scoreboard.
Yeah.
And Ivan had to combat. You know how footballers score direct from the corner kick?
Yeah.
That is where the ball was. Ivan combated from that angle.
Yeah. Ivan,
every time I see that, it's something that can never get out of my mind. I'm like, how is he able to get that oval thing deep in that corner through those posts? It's something that to date, every time I say it, it's the first thing for me that comes to mind.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, when looking at rugby in general as a sport, what are the things you think that need to be changed about the game, or what are the things that maybe you do not appreciate about the game?
I think there needs to be more order,
and
professionalism, especially at club level. Well, the issues at the union are issues that are happening at every federation in Uganda. But you feel we are in an era where sport needs to start taking a different direction, a direction of professionalism. Of course, it's not something that can happen overnight, but you feel it is a direction that people running these clubs, or probably with the help of the union, but sometimes you probably don't need to wait for the union, for them to start thinking the direction of how do we start organizing ourselves professionally. Because you have rugby players who also have full-time jobs elsewhere. So the time that they offer the sports is probably limited. But at the end of the day, probably you have big dreams of taking this club to the next level. You have different dreams of bringing in sponsorships, improving the revenue streams of your institution or organization. So you can't get into that direction if you've not labored to say we need to take a professional direction. And these are the steps we need to take if we are to take this direction. So I feel it is something that is lacking, not only in rugby, but I feel the sports sector in general in Uganda, something that is lacking that we need to start considering moving forward.
Yeah. Of course, for those that are seeing us yet again, we are at the Gardens, Nigeria. As you can see, very, very beautiful place. It is a bar, but also a party space for all those that want to host their parties. But what's one more interesting thing that they have is the East African Meat Carnival. There's even a big poster just there next to where we are, just talking about the fact that this weekend they'll be having DJ Bush Baby, DJ Lave, DJ Mose, barbecue buffets as well will be around this Saturday, 24th of Feb 2024. For your reservations, call the number 0785 340 620 or 0775 927 271. That is ideally it. But anyway, now let's jump into journalism. How did journalism start for you? I mean, you could have been a doctor, you could have been an astronaut, but somehow you became a journalist. How and why?
3 things I wanted to be growing up.
Yeah.
One of those was being a professional footballer.
Man, me too, man. But here we are.
The other, you're like, if I retire, I'll probably then get into coaching, be a football coach. But then the other was also to be a journalist.
Okay.
I think it's something that I was practicing all the way through primary.
But the beauty for you is the fact that everything you're focused to do is in sports.
Yeah.
So you've remained in the line. Now for me,
ends with sports. So
I wanted to be whatever. I wanted to be a footballer. Then somehow I went into rugby. Then somehow I'm in marketing. Okay, but I'm now back into sports and rugby. But anyway.
To cut the long story short, it's about 2010.
Yeah.
August, September, after the World Cup final, I was staying with a cousin of mine around Chireka.
Yeah.
And she had a neighbor who had a sister who was a friend of mine called Gloria.
Mm-hmm.
So one time some Monday night I'm watching UBC Sports Gallo, and I'm seeing Gloria on TV.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, what the heck? So the following, I waited for the following day, and I'm like, how did you end up there? Like, because I was like, if she's there, that means I can also be there.
Yeah.
She told me what happened, and she told me I just need to go to UBC and talk to Andrew Patrick Wandaga. May he so rest in eternal peace.
I know, may he so rest in peace.
Yes, I remember that day I woke up, I was home. I had over like 3K, but then taxis were cheap. From Sebuku to town was 500K. Then you'll walk from town to UBC and all that. So I went to see Andrew Patrick Wandaga. Get to the gate, they asked me if I have an appointment. I'm like, yes, I do have an appointment. They direct me to his office. So I get to his office, I greet him, I tell him I want to be part of the sports team. He's like, oh, do you have a pen and paper? So he told me to write a number down, and he told me, call that gentleman. It's called Nadine Chiligi. Now at the time I didn't know that Rwandaga wasn't part of the sports team, because we used to see him on TV, but he was in charge of current affairs, and it was Dean Chiligi who was in charge of sports. So I called Dean. At the time, I think it was a time period to take kids back to school, and I couldn't get a hold of him. So eventually, he kept on giving me appointments, but he wasn't available. So eventually, he gave me an appointment, and he was available. That is also the time when Star TV is starting out. Yeah. So his office is very busy with people who are bringing proposals and all that. So this one time, I got to his office. He's in there, and there are so many people. I'm like, I'll wait for my turn. So I stood waiting for my turn. That's when I had somebody tap me at the back, and they're like, Bakuyita. So I went inside, I reintroduced myself, I told him what I wanted to do and all that. So I was like, okay. Come back the following day. So I came the day of the show, and I thought they were going to put me on set. Yeah. I did research like for 3 days. So I go, and he gets me in touch with the producer who was at the time Hoffman Sempewa, and he just invited me to sit around to see how things operate or things happen. So I go back to his office, and he's like, okay, next week I'll give you a chance. I was so happy, excited. I didn't tell anyone, just focused on preparing, because I knew, it's a golden opportunity and you don't want to blow it. So of course, yes, the first show I think it was a show that Patrick Anjonos used to host with Alice Namatov and Aisha Nasanga, but for some reason that night they weren't working, and I did that show with Peter Otai. Okay. So 1-2 shows. Peter Otai, at the time I think they had a gap at radio, Imagine FM. He told me to come around in midweek, introduced me to the station manager. So I started doing radio and TV at the same time, but voluntary, because you just want to prove yourself. They have given you an opportunity. You have a chance to learn and get better as an individual. But while that is happening, I was a big fan of Ahmed Hussein and Sanyu FM. Yeah. Like, I just loved the way he used to do his bulletins, and they were so unique and special throughout school and all that. So, and you wanted to replicate that. So People at Magic, of course, were welcoming. You're doing the TV beats once a week, and then you have this weekly show you're doing with Chris Mugisa. It was called Inside Sports. So that is how that journey started. You start going to the field, you meet different people, the Ismas and all the other guys, so they become your friends. So one time I talked to Isma, I'm like, but what does it take to start writing for Daily Monitor? Isma is like, you reach out to Mark Namanya. You lose nothing by reaching out to Mark Namanya. There's no WhatsApp at the time. The mode of communication is Facebook. So I started interacting, chatting with Mark Namanya. I had written a few of my stuff here and there. I dropped at them on his email and stuff like that. And I remember vividly his response was, come and meet me on Wednesday. So I went to Daily Monitor on Wednesday. I met Mark with another lady called Lydia Bakumpe. We talked to Mark and he's like, we are joining Daily Monitor on freelance basis. Basically, your money is in your fingers. The more stories you write, the more money you get. So, so Mark is like, when are you starting? I'm like, I'm ready to start. He's like, oh, okay, you start.
I've seen so much chaos about how much people have paid. I mean, from players right now, image rights, to lawyers who are complaining about being given small money. How much were they giving you for those stories?
At the time, it didn't really matter. So, because I remember my first story ran on the 17th of August 2011. Actually, that story is still pinned on my Facebook page. And I submitted it to on the 16th, and trust me, that night I didn't sleep.
I've made it.
I wasn't sure the story was going to run, but I was so excited. Like, I remember coming to town, walking on the streets, and you want to open every paper to check if your story has run.
You thought they had put it in some papers and not others.
No, Daily Monitor, like, I just wanted to be, like, I could not wait to get to office. I remember, because I was juggling UBC and Daily Monitor, I remember going to UBC at the gates, and the newspapers are there, opening the papers, and there's a story. It was about table tennis. A friend of mine called Kevin Mafabi, and I can never forget the title, Mafabi Shines in China. It was a very small story, but it meant the world to me, and for me, that is how that journey started.
So does that mean that you went on TV before you wrote a story?
Yes.
How was that first experience of TV? Did you eat your words?
Of course, now
first get some whatever?
Of course, the butterflies were there. You're quaking, you're speaking very fast.
Was it pre-recorded or live?
No, it was live. It was live. UBC. I didn't tell anyone. It was, you know, that thing, you tell people stuff and then they don't come to pass. So I didn't tell anyone. And my cousin saw me. She called my father. I think he was already in bed. My father I'm told he woke up everyone in the house. So I went back home, and my sister at the time, she should have been 3 or 4. I remember going back, and she's like, Clive, tukulabe ku TV. I mean, you're supposed to be sleeping because you're supposed to wake up early for school. So that is how that journey started, and it's been exciting, full of memories from then to date. Okay.
Looking at the current rugby situation, the games that are happening, the transitions in the fact that we have a new championship, how are you looking at the new season? Any particular observations that you've seen, both in the men and women's rugby situation?
Well, apart from probably the new formats,
you
feel, I also love the fact that we have more games for the reserves.
Yeah.
You feel that probably that is also one of the ways young or junior players can grow and develop. If you're playing regularly on a weekly basis, if you have enough competition in your legs, it helps you get better as a player. For me, I thought that was a very good initiative by the union or the organizers of the league, because at the end of the season, of course, you have players who have probably earned their right to eventually be elevated to the senior team and all that. But also you feel that on the side of the ladies, that the game keeps on growing, especially if you keep on having people wanting to introduce new teams. That means that you're going to have more women now, more young girls playing the game of rugby. And now with probably more games being played, the competitions and all that, it also helps players get better. So in terms of competitions, you believe that the more number of games you play, or the more amount of game time somebody has in their legs, the more they get to develop and get better as players.
2023 transitioning into 2024, looking at the national teams, both 7s and 15s, men and women, what was your observation from a journalist point of view?
Well, especially with the 7s, you feel we're growing, improving, getting better, slowly closing the gap on the African continent. I mean, the team still has a chance to qualify for the Olympics, just like the men, because there was a time when probably only the 7th team for the men was performing, and everyone was looking at them as the team that is going to elevate and take Ugandan 7s rugby to the next level. But also now the women are standing up and they want to be counted. For me, something that also is motivating, especially for the people who have invested time and dedication to see that 7s rugby, especially in the women, grows just like it is growing in the men. So I believe that we probably just need to have that continuity, doing what you're doing right, what you feel is right, and probably improving the few areas that you feel that you need to improve. You feel it's just a matter of time that probably the ladies will also get there.
How about from the point of funding? Funding is a big challenge in sports in Uganda and Africa at large. From what you're seeing in rugby, what's the scope and what's happening elsewhere in other sports in Uganda?
Well, the challenges in rugby, the challenges elsewhere. Of course, they talk about the billions that are coming from National Council Sports. Now, that goes back to the union. How are you using this money for the growth and development of the sport? Yes, rugby is one of those sports that in the country they are lucky to have a sponsor or funder like Now Special. But you also feel that probably what Now Special is investing rather in the sport can only push you to a certain level. So as people who are in charge of running the sport, how are you opening up the other revenue streams that can come in so that you can be able to do what you want to do, especially at the level of development? Yes, you have a bit of government funding coming in, but still, even if you get that and put it with what now Special is giving you, it can only push you to a certain level. It goes back to what we said earlier, the sense of now trying to look into the professional direction. If you want to look into that direction, that means you need to have your revenue streams opened up, because you need money to do some of the things that you are supposed to do. But you want to feel that they are on the right track in terms of funding. You only have to pray and hope that that funding can be put to the right use for the sport to be able to keep on growing.
Maybe back to journalism. There is a perception amongst many people that are not so tied to football that what we call sports journalism in Uganda is basically football. And I'll be honest, and I've watched a couple of shows where 80% of the show, I'm not going to mention the names of the shows because I don't want them to feel some type of way, but 80% of the show is football. And like 20%, that is where you cram in cricket, you cram in rugby, you cram in athletics, you cram in what, but most of the times they're talking about football in Uganda. So for you to be a successful journalist in Uganda, sports journalist, do you have to particularly specialize in football?
Not really, but I'll answer your question this way. And I wouldn't say all of us. I would say majority of us sports journalists, probably 90 or even 95% of us currently, our entry point into journalism was football. That's a fact. I'm trying to think about people whose entry point is rugby at the moment, and I can probably only think about Ernest Akorevirungi from Kawo Sports, and probably also Deus, Bugemba Daily Monitor, but the rest of us, because for some reason, and it's something that so many people don't want to accept, football is the biggest sport in the world. Biggest sport in the world, with the exception of places like India, where cricket, of course, is the biggest. So because it is the biggest sport in the world, people tend to follow it a lot more than any other sport. I remember when I first joined a Daily Monitor, I was encouraged by the sub-editor at the time, Sunday Abashaija, to specialize in something that was not football. Andrew Mangosha was writing football. Of course, Dakaba was writing basketball, rugby, and all the other things, but he was also writing football. I mean, he had so many people writing football, and he was like, for your football story to pass, it's always going to be extremely hard. Try to specialize and get into something different. That is how I ventured into volleyball. And for about 6 or 7 years, volleyball was my thing. But my entry point in the sport was football. And because probably football is very easy to understand, it is very easy to find, people find it easier to specialize in that. But also it takes a personal initiative as an individual to say, I want to learn other things. Ismail taught me cricket.
And I've tried to learn cricket. I know a couple of things, but I keep forgetting them.
I won't say I'm an expert, but I can see myself through a cricket game for 3 hours, something that I would never do in the past. But also, you try to say, let me go and watch a bit of rugby. And every time you're watching rugby, the people I watch rugby with will tell you, Leslie Swaib Kanyik and all the other people, I spend the entire 80 minutes asking questions. Because you want to learn and get better.
Which is okay.
You're not an expert, but you're watching the game with all the other people that are experts. But I would be lying that I can write a comprehensive rugby report like Ernest, like Deos, like Dakava, like Swibe and all that. But I can survive at rugby ground. I can come and enjoy myself because I understand the basics of the game, the exciting moments of the game, and all that. Something that probably you can only get if you put in that personal initiative that I want to learn this thing and probably improve my knowledge in this department.
Does that necessarily mean that if I am an upcoming and budding journalist, that I need to know football first, or I need to know at least almost everything? Can't I be a specialist? Can't I be a specialist? Do I have to learn things I probably don't fancy? Can't I just choose to be a specialist?
You can. I give you an example of Ernest. I'm sure his entry point into sports journalism.
But you also see where I'm coming from. The fact that you can mention about 10 names when it comes to football, then you're going to mention one Ernest for rugby, or let's say one person for volleyball. Doesn't that mean that these other sports are getting very low mileage?
Of course there is. But then it goes back to you as an individual. How much do you want to know outside what you already know? If you want to know what you already know, you put in the initiative to try and learn a few other things. I try to learn rugby, try to learn cricket, volleyball, motorsports, and all that. You were talking about the issue of specializing. Truthfully, every journalist needs to specialize, be an expert at something. But then that works in setups where probably there's a bit of enough manpower or personnel. I'll give you an example of me. I work with Sanyu FM, where I'm the only person in my department.
You're the only person in sports.
So
how are you handling a whole sports department by you?
I mean, you're just doing bulletins and a show on Saturday.
So when there is a sports department meeting, what do? You
No, the sports is under news.
Okay.
Sports is under news. So you cannot say I'm going to only specialize in football. Because I mean, you cannot be doing football all year round.
But I think football in Uganda is big enough to do. Alone.
It is big enough, but then there are other things that are happening that are beyond football. Today you have the netball team playing at back-to-back World Cups. If you don't give them the shine they want, then you're doing a disservice to the nation. If you have the Rugby Cranes winning and defending the African Cup, if you don't invest time to go and be part of the coverage at Chadon or even follow them from wherever they are playing, you're doing a disservice to the country, because there's someone who probably missed that, but then they want to listen to you or watch you so that they get to know what exactly happened. So it is very hard to specialize and say, I'm only going to focus on football. Much as, yes, football is the biggest sport. That is why you open up phone lines, and 9 out of the 10 you get are asking about football questions. And you'll probably have 1 or 2 asking you about basketball or any other discipline. And they're only doing that because they're probably fans of that discipline.
Yes.
And they're like, hey, there are things happening elsewhere. We need to know about them. So you cannot run away from the fact that football is still the biggest sport, not only in Uganda but also in the world.
Okay, yeah. Generally looking at sport in Uganda, you're a travel journalist. What do you see out there that you think we should maybe adopt, maybe pick a leaf from, that we can be able to implement here?
People have been celebrating a lot about the sports law.
Okay.
And the last I checked, we're waiting for it to be gazetted, then it can get into action. But for me, having the sports law in place, when we still treat sports as a by the way, won't really change the landscape.
Yeah.
When the things that are probably affecting us are the things that are affecting so many African teams, rather African nations in the sports sector. I mean, you have a few countries that have really invested a lot in sports, and they are looking at sports as an industry that can change people's livelihoods and put food on the table. I mean, you talk about South Africa, you talk about Egypt and the countries in the Maghreb, but it is not that case in most of the African countries. Of course, you have a few exceptions like probably Zimbabwe and Namibia, where their rugby and cricket players are professional players, where probably their leagues are professional leagues, but then people who play for their national teams earn a living because of the funding that comes into these particular disciplines, and the federations or government really pay a lot of attention.
Yeah.
But then when you try to turn the table, flip the coin and look at all the other disciplines, you would say they are struggling. Today, the West African countries can afford to brag because they have so many footballers littered all over Europe playing football. But in the actual sense, when you go to those countries and look at the sports industry in those countries, they are not any special. They are just like us. They are also struggling. The only difference is that they probably know how to get their talent out there, especially the football beat. Of course, you'll have a number of Nigerians playing in the NBA, but when you come back here on the African continent, they are not really. Their basketball is not really that big or huge. They still need to have the NBA superstars coming in for their national team to perform, but domestically or locally, they are struggling just to struggling. So it is a case of us as a society, as a community, as a continent, not accepting the fact that the industry is big, the industry is huge, and there is enough for everyone, and we just need to probably know what we need to do for everyone to be able to benefit from this industry. Okay.
Do you think Uganda as a country has embraced and understood sports as a business?
No, we've not.
What can we do to take that step?
We've not. I think the only federation at the time, rather at the moment, that is trying to force that and let people understand is football. They have really tried to take people in that direction, but still it's the case of taking cattle to a whale, but you won't force it to drink water. That the federation has tried its level best to help its members, stakeholders, especially clubs, to understand that this is the direction that we need to take. We need to do these things. If we need to take the professional direction, if you're to improve your revenue streams and all that. But unfortunately, the people they are preaching to are people who don't really care. They are comfortable where they are. As long as send them team, as long as I'm happy my team is winning, the rest don't really matter. Of course, most of the things are being implemented because the federation is enforcing them. But if the federation was not enforcing them, we wouldn't be having these things. A case of probably having a CEO in place, and still somebody will have a CEO for the sake of having a CEO, but not having a CEO with a clear KPIs of how are you going to improve and grow a business. You're looking at a football club as something to give you a joy and excitement, not something to actually make money and improve you as an individual, improve the community, improve the livelihoods of the people that are part of this institution and their families. So we are in a state of, yes, we hear about it, but we are not interested in taking that direction. And for me, that is how I would describe the sports landscape in Uganda.
Okay, tell us a bit about USPA. How did USPA start? What's the USPA vision? Where is it going?
Well, the Uganda Sports Press Association has been around since 1970. We are lucky that one of our founding members, Mr. Frederick Sechito, is still alive.
That's great.
Actually, the last USPA Awards we held, we honored him with a Lifetime Achievement Award. Because we thought it was the last time. This award goes out to different people who have contributed to the growth of sports in Uganda, but we had never appreciated one of our own, and we thought that Mr. Sechito was the best candidate to be appreciated. So, since 1970 up to date, USPA is an association that brings sports journalists in Uganda together. Of course, there is a challenge of having everyone on board, but it's a challenge that we are slowly maneuvering, and we hope that in the long run, we will be able to have everyone affiliating to the Uganda Sports Press Association, because we also affiliate to the International Sports Press Association, which is AIPS. And at the moment, we have about 250 members on board as members of the Uganda Sports Press Association who pay annual subscription. Our target is to have more members on board. Actually, our target is to have the Fat Cat podcast crew members of the Uganda Sports Press Association before the end of this year. Yes, we have an association that is led by the president, who was a vice president, the general secretary. Currently, I'm serving in that capacity with an assistant. You have the organizing secretary with an assistant, the treasurer with an assistant, and other different committees that run the different affairs of the association. One of our biggest properties on the calendar annually is the Uganda Sports Press Association Gala, where we reward or recognize athletes in different disciplines that have excelled every year. And for the last over a decade, we've been doing that in conjunction with and Now Special, who have outdone themselves for the period they have been with us to make sure that the USPA Gala is the biggest awards event every time it happens. But also on a monthly basis, together with Now Special, we still do recognize athletes that have excelled at our monthly assembly, where we also discuss other different things that can improve us as individuals, but also as an association.
Okay. What's the importance of a journalist being part of such an organized or such a unified organization, I should say?
I think for me, the biggest objective or advantage of being under an association or being part of an association, it helps you to have one voice. When you are united with one voice and you want to move in a certain direction as a group, it becomes easier. It is very hard to say we want to move in this direction if everyone is saying I'm going to do it alone on my own. But then it becomes very easy if you're moving as a group. I mean, sport today has so many challenges. Some of those challenges affect us, the media, directly. But it is very hard to probably be heard or get one voice if you did it as an individual. But then it is easier when you do it as a unit, as an association.
Yeah, that's true.
I'll probably share something that I shouldn't be sharing on the podcast. One time we had come to Legends to watch a rugby game, and the people at the gate, of course, they had gone through the proper channels, accreditation and stuff like that. We applied for accreditation. The list is put at the gate. We come for the games and we are told somebody has removed the list. So we tried to inquire. The list was, because we were told, we knew what was going on. Communication is here, but the list has been removed and the bouncers can't allow us into the venue. It was a big game. I think Cobs were playing Pirates or Cobs. So we're like, but what's going on? This thing has to stop. So we're about 5 or 6 of us who mobilized ourselves. Unfortunately, I led the coup and we recorded a short video, of course, sharing our dissatisfaction and the next course of action. And something that was small then eventually became big and everyone picked it up. And along the way, I remember the union, together with the management of Legends and our association leaders at the time, Patrick Kanyamos was the president, Johnson was the general secretary. They were involved in a series of meetings, which meetings eventually did bear some fruit, and we've got solutions and moved on in the direction that everyone thought was the right direction. So for me, just like any other sector or industry, you need to have a place that you come together where you can share your grievances, where your grievances can then be shared to the powers that be, to see that we do find a solution and we move on as we are supposed to move on.
Let's talk a little bit about media in Uganda. Do you think media, as it stands, especially in sports, is evolving as the rest of the world is evolving with media? I mean, we see radio, we see TV, and all the new things that are coming up. Do you think sports media is evolving?
Not at the pace that you'd want it to.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we have innovations like this, the Fat Cat podcasts streamed on YouTube and other places, and everyone can watch it from wherever they are. But then, why I'm saying not at the pace that it should be moving, sports journalism in Uganda is not yet appreciated by mainly the media owners.
Really?
Yeah, by the media owners, but also the people who are into sports. I mean, you'll bear with me. You watch an entire bulletin on TV, and it's not that it's a crime for sports to come last, but you'll probably have one story, 2 stories. You're lucky when you have 3, you're lucky when you have 4, but you'll always have 1 or 2. And for somebody who has been in a newsroom for some period of time, I know what happens. Every time something comes in and it's going to affect the bulletin, it's going to affect the newspaper, the people who are affected the most are sports.
Yeah.
I've been in the newsroom where a chidango comes around this time and they're like, muchiteke mu sports. So if they're going to put it in sports, if the editor had a full page of audio stories, then that page is going to be scrubbed because somebody has brought a chidango very late and it has to be put in sports. So media owners are yet to appreciate sports, but also people into sports are yet to appreciate the importance or the work of media in growing the industry or taking the industry to the next level. Sports journalists go to cover all these tournaments, Africa Cup of Nations, Commonwealth, people go for the World Cup. Recently we had a team going for the Netball World Cup, you have a team going for the Olympics. You'll be shocked if a journalist told you that my media house funded my trip 100%. It's very rare that your media house will fund your trip 100%. But when you're there, they're actually happy and glad to have you there. When the managers go for these
maybe they don't have money.
When the managers go to for these management meetings, they're actually speaking with a lot of pride and excitement that they have somebody who is out there covering an international tournament for their audience. So it is it's a sector that has not grown at the pace that it should be growing because of the media owners, but also the people into sports understanding the understanding and appreciating the importance of media.
Okay, let's talk about Clive a bit. Besides all this, what are your passions as Clive? What are the things you like to indulge in?
Sports.
There's nothing else besides sports.
I love being a sports fan. Yeah, but I also love traveling.
Yeah.
I love going out, despite being a teetotaler. Yeah. I don't love sleep, so
Yeah.
I love spending also my free time watching a lot of TV.
Okay.
Though of late on phone, not on the actual TV. So you'd want to say that I spend a lot of time on my phone.
Okay.
Not making noise on WhatsApp, but doing a lot of watching, listening to a lot of audio podcasts, especially on BBC Sounds and all that. So most of the things that I love doing evolve around what I entirely do. But of course, once in a while, yes, I love going to the beach, just chilling.
Any particular visions or things we should expect from Clive in the future?
Well, it is something that I had started, but then along the way I suspended it. I hope and pray that I can resurrect it, having my own media house.
Okay.
Or having a platform that does do a lot of publications. You must have heard about Football 256.
Yeah, Football 256.
Before Samo and his Pulse Sports people came and they brought us on board. But it's something that will very soon be resurrected, though in a different direction altogether.
Okay, so as we start to conclude, there are two segments that we're going to go in. The first segment is called Test Your Rugby Knowledge. Don't worry, don't be very scared. These questions were tailored to at least accommodate
me.
So the first question in Test Your Rugby Knowledge is, Entebbe, Mongas is a team from Entebbe, and they have a home ground. What is the name of their home
House
ground?
of Pain.
Okay. When was the last Rugby World Cup?
2023.
Okay. When did Uganda last win the Rugby Africa Sevens?
2019. Should be before COVID.
Are you sure about that?
That one I'm guessing.
The answer is 2022. Achadono. And the last question from this segment is, what team has its home in Chitante? What rugby team has its home in Chitante?
Pass. Hold on. It might be embarrassing.
You want on those shows they say
embarrassing when you say the answer. First, give me a clue.
On these okay, before I give you a clue, on these shows they can tell you, do you want an option to call someone?
No,
Should
just
we
give me a clue.
It's a new team in the league. It's the newest team in the league.
Is it the team coached by Edmond?
Yes.
I'm here to get the name. Eagles
Rugby Club.
Eagles Rugby Club.
Yes. So then we normally have what they call a trivia. This is something, it doesn't have anything to do with sport or rugby. Sometimes there can be sports questions, who knows? But it's just something, and we're going to be having a table out for all our guests that have come, just to test general knowledge, like GPA. So that's what it's all about. So trivia. There are 5 questions. The first one: who was the first woman pilot to fly solo across the Atlantic?
Pass.
That was Amelia Earhart. When did Facebook launch? First launch. You said you started on Facebook. You sent your message to Mark Namanyi on Facebook.
2006-7.
I'm going to give you a second chance.
2005.
The answer is 2004. This one is a bit complex, but I'm sure you can get it. I'm going to give you a couple of clues.
Try.
What food manufacturing company, headquartered in Michigan, uses several animal mascots to sell cereals such as Newton, the owl, Tony the tiger? Wali yako ku cereal? Ochazirya. If you're a customer that buys cereal, they have a mascot called Tony the Tiger. They have a rooster called Cornelius. And it's a general brand of a very popular brand from America of cereal.
I know it's going to be embarrassing, but pass.
Try. Okay, it starts with K.
Kentucky.
It starts with K.
Kentucky.
No. It's cereal. K-E. Kellogg's. And how many questions? 1, 2, 3. Oh, we have 2 more questions to go. In the Catholic Church, the Bishop of Rome is a title more commonly known as what? In the Catholic Church, the Bishop of Rome is a title more commonly known as what? By what term?
Pope.
Yes, the Pope. This singer is famously called Material Girl. She's a very old singer. She's not new, but she's commonly known as Material Girl.
Tina Turner.
Pardon?
Tina Turner.
No, she's slightly younger than Tina Turner. She's not that old, but she's very popular.
Mariah Carey.
Her name also starts with M, but it's not Mariah Carey.
Madonna.
Yes, Madonna. Yeah, so anyway, very, very interesting conversation we have had here at the Gardens, Nigeria. Every Tuesday there is a wonderful and engaging quiz that we have. So it's something that you should look out for. Every Tuesday, come for the quiz. But then every last Saturday of the month, they do have the East Africa Meat Carnival. This time around, they'll be having DJ Bush Baby, DJ Lave, DJ Mose, and there's a lot of barbecue for you to experience, and of course, a lot of entertainment. It is also a party venue that you can be able to embrace for your arrangements, your parties of any sort. But for the East Africa Meat Carnival, if you want to make an early reservation, call the number 0785 340 620 or the number 0755 927 271. So, Clive, any last words from me before we close this?
Thank you for hosting me. I never dreamt be on this podcast at one time, but thank you for giving me the opportunity. And yes, just keep on doing what you're doing. It's a great job to elevate and promote the sport of rugby in Uganda.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that, and thank you very much for your time as well. Yet another episode of the Fat Cats podcast. Do follow us on social media on our different platforms. Do get a chance to subscribe to our YouTube, and also leave us feedback and let us know what you think. Let us know what you want to have on the podcast, who you want to hear from, and anything that you want us to put out there, we'll put it into consideration. Otherwise, from us, we're going now into the after experience of the podcast at the Gardens, Nigeria. Cheers. Thanks for listening in. Share with us your thoughts from today's episode, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.